from a podcast called "This Podcast Is Making Me Thursday Want to Talk to You," and I think and I said, you don't have to tell me what it's about. I said, if it's called "This Podcast Is Making Me Thirsty," you definitely don't need to tell me what it's about, and I'm going on. This is what I want to do.
It's a Seinfeld podcast. It's called "This Podcast Is Making Me Thirsty." But I thought, this is what a podcast should be.
I just did the Seinfeld guys pod the other day. It came up.
These pretzels are making me thirsty.
Oh,
that one. Shout out. We've done it. I've done it. Have you did it?
I've not gotten a chance to do it yet. I'm looking forward to it.
It's so fun. They're so fun.
When I don't know, it must have shown up in my feed, but I see these guys tweeting about Seinfeld. I'm like, oh, what's this? And I find it's a podcast called "This Podcast Is Making Me Thirsty."
One of the most popular Seinfeld podcasts is "This Podcast Is Making Me Thirsty," co-hosted by Chris O'Hara and Tony Chulo.
Welcome to "This Podcast Is Making Me Thirsty," the number one destination for Seinfeld fans. This is 2 Up and 2 Down. Here's our producer, Chris, to start us off.
All right, welcome back, Thirsty fans. And today we got a season 8 episode. It's the Susie. So, Tony, why don't you start us off with your first up here?
The Susie, season 8, as Chris mentioned. I was just looking at my ups here because I'm going first, and this is a rough one. I guess I'll use this because this is one of the ones I've always liked. I might have used this when we talked about this episode way back in the day. For those that were listening to 3 people, I always kind of got a good chuckle, and this is a week up, but I got a good chuckle at Jerry's joke when they're at the fake funeral there, and Jerry turns around like, I slept with both of them. That whole thing there, Jerry gives a little wink. Good little Jerry, making a little joke at this thing, trying to make everyone. He sees what's going on. He calls it out a little bit at the same time, does his funny joke, and it's not a lot here, people. That's what I'm trying to go with here. I got nothing. I got Jerry's joke at the funeral for my first up.
Ooh, all right. So, Chris, over to you. What's your first up?
It's funny. I don't even know why Jerry was at the funeral. Why was he there? But anyway, the Susie, our friend David Mandel wrote this. 32 million people, season 8. And another fun fact, you guys will love this. That same night, back February 13th of 97, the TV movie Nowhere to Run with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Guess who was in that film with Jean-Claude? Anthony Stark, our first guest. So good old Jimmy was going against Mandel that night. So here we go. Speaking of going against, I'm going to go the K-Man here. His scene after coming home from the Knicks game. Always fun. And I love this whole gambling rationale. That's some sweet action. And then, of course the Knicks won by 37. Reggie Miller didn't play. So I loved it, got involved. I love that they had to keep pulling it back to finish the story. I felt like that was a little bit old school, trying to get Kramer to talk and give that great story. And obviously it ended with Reggie Miller, Spike, and Kramer going to a strip club. I mean, can you just picture that? The K-Man, like I said, whether it's someone famous or Elle McPherson, right? He hangs with everybody, or the common man. So Kramer's just lovable and relatable. And that's my first up, is his kind of little gambling obsession there. And obviously the whole fight with Reggie Miller.
Yeah, that's a great scene. So, yeah, good up there. Tony, back to you. What do you got for your second up?
Yeah, kind of mad I didn't take that up front, because it's one that I made as my big up. It's the one that I actually would have, in an otherwise we'll get there episode I don't love. I did like the K-Man. I was going to use it. I should have used it. All right. Listen, my other one, because he's true to himself. And so whether this might be his strongest episode, but I'm going to give my up to Peterman. He kind of quarterbacks this whole dumb friggin' thing with Susie and Elaine and everything else, but it's Peterman, so he's okay being how he is, and how he throws me and Susie one night, just throws a story in there about having an affair with Susie while he's talking about her, and the whole thing with Elaine and him. Good. I mean, Peterman's gonna be Peterman, so I don't have many complaints around that. He's gonna do what he's gonna do in this episode. So when I'm finding ups, that's kind of an easy one to cherry pick too. Is that, so listen, we got Peterman. Was it Peterman's best episode? No, but he did kind of at least carry some of that baloney between the other two clowns that we'll get to. But I'll give Peterman front of the show, O'Hurley, my second up.
All right, yeah, thank you. So Chris, back to you. What's your second up?
So yes, I had Peterman as well as a big one, but that's the way this show goes. We don't share ups and downs with each other, and we have to react in real time, which I got to do here because I'm struggling as well with ups. So we mentioned Peterman, friend of the show. I'm gonna go Allison, friend of the show. Shannon Kenny. I thought she really did a great job. Yes, she was out of George's league, of course, but I think her persistence, leaving those messages with George, like, "Oh, where are you?" Like, she just wanted to get rid of this guy. Obviously, didn't want to go to the ball. The whole thing. I thought she was really good. Again, she's a guest star, friend of the show. She didn't steal the show. She wasn't a regular, but she stood out in this episode. Obviously, they brought Peterman back and Moffat as guest stars, but for me, Shannon Kenny did a real nice job. And obviously, we got a lot of great stories from her from this episode. So that's my second up.
All right. Well, thank you guys. So those are the ups. So let's go to Tony for your first down. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I hope this isn't. I don't want to ransack this whole thing, but it's. Do I break this up or do I just give this as one big down? Is what I'm trying to decide here. I don't want to
go for it.
Yeah, I mean, this is just easily. It's got to be one of the top 5 worst Georges of all time. If there's no way around it. I mean, we've talked about some other ones. The dealership is up there as well. We've talked, but the breakup stuff with Kramer is where I got to start. I mean, when they're at dinner talking, that is where I am just one of the worst scenes in the history of the show. Let alone like they're doing it too as if like the way Kramer's talking to George about the breakup, and he's supposed to be like maybe he's breaking up with him. It's supposed to be funny. Where'd all this come from? Why is Kramer friends with this with friend of the show with Shannon Allison? Is he friends with her? Is he good friends with her that he's doing this for her? That was never established. I mean, what is going on? I don't even know where to begin. There's one of the worst Georges of all time, and they drag Kramer into it. The whole thing with the ball, and you got to twirl at the ball. There's not a scene that George is in this episode that I would leave on for more than 4 seconds. I couldn't even get through the rewatch because of this. I mean, that's my down. George is my down. I mean, it's unbelievably how bad it is. It's so bad.
Yeah, I always hated that Kramer ball entrance gag at the end there. It's just stupid and terrible. But I think Kramer got involved because it was Allison that got the Knicks tickets, I think, in the first place. But anyway.
Yeah.
I'll agree with everything you said there. So, Chris, over to you. What do you got for your first down?
Yeah, a great point. I mean, if you didn't mention Hakeem Olajuwon, that was probably the highlight of the episode. So, all right. Yeah, there was a lot there for sure. You forgot about the Georgia Lane cold open, the gigolo conversation. Okay,
I didn't forget about it. That was going to be one of my next downs. But you go ahead and take it. That's fine. That's a whole other thing. This cold open was a horrible cold open.
That's just I thought that encompasses all George. So that's fine. For me, it's going to be why'd they bring back Mike Moffat? Why? I mean, why ruin perfection? He was in the parking space an all time. I mean, I think I gave that an A. It's clean A. It could be an A plus any other day of the week. He was so good. He comes back as a bookie. Like, and not only that, like a scared bookie. Like Mike Moffat had a toughness to him, like no fear kind of guy, like not backing down from George. Not that George is intimidating, but, calling Jerry a phony and then just bringing that back. Like, the phony should have just been a standalone and just let it breathe, let it be. You don't have to bring these things back. And again, that's a lot of problems with these, season 8 and 9. And, you didn't think Mandel would do that. And I don't know who or maybe there was some favor called in to bring this guy back. I don't know. I'd love to dig deeper there. We had Mandel on already. Would love to ask him that, but never understood bringing back Moffat. Getting stuck in the trunk. Come on. And then the timing was way off. Like, how long was he in that trunk? Because the Susie dying stuff, like, had to happen a couple days later. He's in the trunk from days? Explain that one to me. First down.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Mike Moffat, because that was going to be my question if you guys had to bring it up. What did you guys think of this Mike Moffat versus earlier seasons Mike Moffat? And you just answered that. So thank you. Yeah, that whole trunk thing and his thumbs. Yeah, just always hated that. So excellent points there with Mike. But Lee Ehrenberg, we loved him as a guest. So I hope everybody checks out his podcast and our interview with him. So Tony, back to you. What do you have for your second down?
Couldn't agree more about Rooney and Moffat. And by the way, we kind of did. We did kind of talk about Mandel about this. He gave us his side of it where they liked bringing stuff back. They liked an homage to the old world, and they were fans of it, so they brought it all back. It's all over the place in these later seasons. He did it. The rest of them did it as well. There's these later writers.
A true homage would to be Leave It Alone.
I'm on your side. I'm just saying he defended himself. We for those asking, we actually talked to him and asked him. We did talk to him and ask him. He told us he was a fan of the world. He liked bringing that world in, and they wrote about it. They did it a lot. They did it all the time.
I have my own sort of theory, such as it is, that really what I call sort of the second generation of Seinfeld writers, meaning obviously there's the show at first, and then you get like Larry Charles and Peter Melman and the sort of the early writers. And then sort of the next gen that came in, and even though there are people in between, obviously, but that's right. The next gen that came in, which is like Schaefer and Berg, and then me, and then the people that kind of came, after us, like Steve Korn and whatnot. We came in as people that recognized it as the genius show it was, and that we were fans. And again, I think you see it in some of what we did, which is yes, we start to break, not exactly the third wall, but it gets a little meta in the sort of, we were the ones studying the patterns and then began to make a little bit of jokes occasionally about the patterns. And I'm as guilty of that as anyone. And in some ways, whether it's a breaking the fourth wall or whatever wall it is joke, even something like the Bizarro, there's a meta quality to it that obviously I think you have to be a fan. You can't just write it, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes total sense. And this was an example of when they shouldn't have done it. I totally agree. Ruined Moffat. My second down, and thank you for leaving it for me. I mean, this is, if I called it the top 5 worst Georges, this is the worst Elaine, in my opinion, probably of all time, if not the worst in the top 5 as well. The Susan stuff, then, I'm not a Suze, and the whole, she give it a description of all these different people with names, and that was supposed to be funny. They beat that with a freaking dead horse. What am I, some floozy? It just, if you want to talk about a bad Elaine, they give her that beauty mark. They curl her hair up. They put the leather jacket on. O'Hara likes to say. I mean, this is peak horrible Elaine. This is as bad as it gets. I mean, all I wrote down was Susie. Are you kidding me? Question mark. Peggy? Question. I mean, I got nothing else to say. I mean, you all watched the episode. It's just terrible. Susie, and she does that whole explanation thing. And Susie, we're here, and just dreadful. Just absolutely dreadful. And I don't really like Peggy, to be honest with you, either. I think they have her in a couple of episodes of Putty and everything else. Never really liked that lady. I'm happy to have her on the show. Not the best character. But yeah, so that's my next down is Elaine. So we got a bad Elaine and we got a bad George.
All right. So that brings us back over to you, Chris. What do you got for your second down?
Yeah, it took a lot there with those two. So I'm trying to piece some things together because that's where the downs are. So, I mean, how about this in general? I'm going to give the ball a down, okay? Because the whole premise bothered the hell out of me. By the way, George mentioned the ball 7 times in the first 10 minutes. The ball this, the ball that, which just bled into Elaine saying, You're gonna back her in. I couldn't stand that line. And then it just ended. And I talk about this a lot. Tony knows the promo. Like again with this, with Elaine at the end selling Susie and the camera spinning up top. Like, I mean, you gotta be kidding me. Like, whether it's the pothole or even in the hot tub, Elaine does it like looking at the camera and the camera spins. Like, again, trying to draw people in on the promos. It's just enough already. So many bad things, but obviously Peggy and Susie's a main part of it. But the concept of the ball, I think, was centered on George, and it ended up ruining Kramer. And so the ball kind of dragged him into this too, the whole backless thing. The only good line I actually will give Kramer is, it's a rental, but I've had it for 15 years. Kind of like that line, typical K-Man, but the ball in general was it's just so stupid. So second down.
Thank you. So that's the ups and the downs. So Tony, bringing it back to you. What do you got for your wrap up here and your grade?
Yeah, and I'm glad. I don't think we either of us touched on this. You sort of did there, but the answer machine stuff. To your point, when he says, "Oh, so you hit the ball on the answer machine," that bothered me too. I didn't realize how many times he said ball. I didn't even get to the end on the rewatch. I got to tell full disclosure. I didn't even get to the end you're talking about. I know it, and I just couldn't watch it. I just can't go through with it. But yeah, I mean, we're there. I mean, the Kramer stuff with Reggie Miller, the Kramer stuff with the rental, that's Kramer. You're always going to get a little bit of consistency out of Kramer, right? Throughout even these later years. We really got nothing with Jerry except the Moffat shit, which was horrible, as O'Hara mentioned. I've already brought up a terrible Elaine. George, absolutely horrible. Everyone loves a meme of him, with the answer machine going. Listen, people, we're not grading this on memes 30 years later. Like, yeah, it's kind of funny, popcorn on the couch on a 3-second clip. We had to sit through a half hour of this. The opening, O'Hara mentioned the cold open, the Gigolo conversation. We got to do a ranking of the worst cold opens. I mean, there's so many. That's up there for sure. You know where we're going, folks. The Susie's an F. I'm not even gonna go any further on this one. I'll let O'Hara go a little bit deeper. I gave most of my stuff in my downs. It's just a terrible episode. I mean, any way you slice it. Mendel, he told, like I said, we talked to him. Not for us. It's not for us. We're not the 30 however million. O'Hara knows how many people watched this episode. We weren't part of that group who enjoyed it. I don't even know. It's just a bad episode. F for the Susie.
All right, thank you, Tony. So, Chris, over to you. Is your grade as harsh as Tony's?
Well, listen, it's funny. I actually had 2 grades down. Believe it or not. I'm a little easier. Maybe because, like I said, I got a soft spot for Peggy. Maybe Megan Cole. Of course, she's welcome on the show anytime. But Tony's points are the Gigolo conversation to start off the episode. You just want to turn it off. And then you end the show with Elaine going, Sue. I mean, you take terrible bun 1, terrible bun 2, and then the crap in the middle is just awful. I mean, Peterman was okay. They ruined Moffat. Why bring him back? It's just useless. And again, when George and Elaine anchor it down, there's not much can save it, right? And usually Kramer could, but when Kramer's doing the Pomodoro, whatever breakup, wave the white flag, people. And then Tony mentioned the whole funeral thing. I mean, I know Tony always loved that, but what the hell was he doing at the funeral? Why was he didn't know Peggy, Susie. Well, he doesn't know anybody, but Susie doesn't exist. I guess that's the point. But why is he going with Elaine to the funeral? And who are all those people in the crowd? So stupid. I mean, really was. The more I think, Tony's got the right grade. It's a clean F. So 32 million people did watch this. The ratings were incredible. But again, this, like I said, it's a well-oiled machine at this point on Thursday night. Nobody was watching Jimmy in the John Club movie that night, so they were stuck with the Susie.
All right, well, there you have it, folks. It doesn't get any worse than that. The Susie and F all around. Feel free to give us a comment on our social media pages. So we thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you at our next episode.